Welcome to the debate. Our focus today, well, it centers on a really fundamental impediment to financial stability for so many households: consumer debt. We see the scale of this problem in the data. The average American household is managing this complex web of liabilities, often topping, $104,000? This isn't just some economic footnote, it's a systemic burden.
And that is a huge weight. It's fundamentally a human problem, not just, a number on a spreadsheet. The journey out of that to financial freedom, it demands a plan, a real long-term plan. But the sheer emotional drag of it all, that feeling of being completely overwhelmed, it causes people to abandon even the most mathematically perfect strategies right in the middle.
Precisely. And the challenge then is figuring out not just if you can pay it down, but how. How do you sequence that repayment to maximize your savings and minimize what you're giving to the bank? So our core disagreement today is on those methods. Which strategy, the debt avalanche, which is all about mathematical optimization, or the debt snowball, which leans on psychological motivation? Which one offers the most effective, the most resilient path to getting to zero? I'll be defending the pure logic and, frankly, the long-term financial superiority of the debt avalanche.
And I will be championing the debt snowball, because I'd argue the primary obstacle to getting out of debt is, at its core, behavioral, not mathematical. And because of that, the strategy that prioritizes consistent action and that feeling of momentum, well, that's always going to outperform the one that's technically efficient, but, gets abandoned.
The logic of efficiency, though, it has to be our starting point. If the goal is financial independence, total capital preservation, then the mechanism has to minimize the total cost of that debt. The debt avalanche method, well, it targets the highest annual percentage rate, the APR, first. This is just the rigorously sound choice because it directly attacks the most aggressive factor working against you, that compounding interest.
Right. And that works perfectly for someone who can treat their finances like a detached business transaction. But debt is emotional. We know people suffer from avoidance behaviors, from debt fatigue. They need to see progress. They need that immediate, tangible feedback.
But that immediate feedback comes at a real cost. Ignoring a 25% APR on a credit card to go after a $500 balance at 5%, yeah, it might give you a brief emotional high, but it guarantees you are paying significantly more in interest over the long run. Let's imagine someone with, say, $20,000 in debt. Over 5 years, the difference between these two strategies could easily be $3,000, maybe $4,000 in completely unnecessary interest. The avalanche removes the greatest weight, the highest financial cost first. That frees up your capital for what really matters sooner. It's objectively the path of least expenditure.
I absolutely acknowledge the mathematical truth in what you're saying. I do. But my position is that maximizing those long-term savings becomes a moot point if the whole plan collapses at month 18. Behavioral studies, they actually demonstrate this. The debt snowball method, targeting the smallest balance first, it has a significantly higher completion rate. Some data suggest adherence is up around 78% versus the avalanche, which is closer to 52%.
That disparity in adherence is, it's compelling, I'll grant you that.
It's everything. It's because the snowball prioritizes those quick wins. When that first small debt is paid off, the psychological relief is just immense. And crucially, that minimum payment from the closed account gets rolled into the next smallest balance. You create this exponentially increasing payment. It provides this continuous, intuitive reinforcement. It's a powerful tool against that scarcity mindset that debt creates. The best plan is the one that accounts for human frailty and actually gets you to the finish line.
Okay, that's a compelling case for completion rates. But let's really examine the financial cost of that behavioral strategy. That $3,000 or $4,000 in extra interest. The money the consumer is sacrificing just to feel good sooner. That's a direct subtraction from their potential long-term wealth. We're not just talking about money spent. We're talking about opportunity cost. That money could be an emergency fund. It could be invested for retirement. Doesn't the snowball fundamentally reward a lack of financial discipline by letting someone hemorrhage capital just to avoid the discomfort of watching a big number go down slowly?
I just don't buy that reasoning, because it presumes the average consumer has this perfect robotic discipline needed for the avalanche. If your mathematically optimal plan gets abandoned, and that 52% failure rate suggests it happens a lot, the cost is 100% failure, right? The person defaults, the high interest debt balloons, and they are so much worse off than if they just taken the slightly more expensive but completed snowball route. The snowball manages emotional triggers, the stress, the anxiety. That makes it the most resilient system for the vast majority of people who are struggling under that enormous emotional drag.
So we both agree then that success really hinges on sustained adherence, and that requires significant discipline, which leads us to the foundation of this whole operation. Neither strategy, not the avalanche, not the snowball, can function if the groundwork for strict financial discipline isn't already there.
I agree 100%. Sophisticated, radical transparency in budgeting it's non-negotiable groundwork. Systems like zero-based budgeting, where every single dollar has a job, or the 50-30-20 rule, which mandates 20% goes to savings and debt, these are absolute necessities. They provide the structure. Without that strict accountability, the money just leaks away. It's that classic leaky bucket phenomenon.
Right. I acknowledge that establishing a system like ZBB is phase one of any effective debt plan. But if we accept that an individual is capable of that level of strict discipline, assigning every dollar a job, why would they then choose an intentionally inefficient strategy? If you've mastered ZBB, you've demonstrated the capacity and the willpower to prioritize long-term goals. Why throw thousands of dollars away unnecessarily?
Because ZBB gives you clarity. It tells you where the money is going. But it doesn't solve the long, dreary, emotional journey of actually paying the debt down. That's the distinction. Discipline and tracking is different from the emotional stamina you need to keep going. The snowball addresses the stamina part. But you did suggest something interesting earlier, a kind of hybrid approach to get those quick wins without sacrificing all that efficiency.
That's right. If we accept the need for some kind of rapid psychological relief, we should find a mathematically derived quick win. I'd propose an alternative sequencing metric that integrates both, the cash flow index, or CFI.
Okay, hold on. The concept of CFI is fascinating, but we have to be careful not to just layer more complexity on top of an already stressed out consumer. So, break it down. How do we make the technical nature of a CFI immediately meaningful to someone just trying to figure out where to start?
It's actually quite intuitive once you understand the focus. The CFI is calculated by taking the principal balance and dividing it by the minimum monthly payment. It's not about the interest rate like the avalanche or the total balance like the snowball. It's about pressure. A low CFI means the debt is a high-pressure liability. It's eating up a huge chunk of your monthly liquidity relative to its size.
So it's basically flagging the debts that are taking the biggest bite out of your paycheck each month.
Exactly. It flags the debts stressing your budget the most right now. So you liquidate these low CFI debts first, you get immediate functional cash flow relief. This is a mathematical quick win, not a purely emotional one. You clear one or two of those accounts, you gain significant breathing room in your monthly budget, and then you pivot immediately to the avalanche to maximize interest savings on what's left.
I will concede that the CFI is a powerful tool for targeting that liquidity pressure. But doesn't this still require a consumer to do a multi-step calculation? The pure simplicity of the snowball, just rank your debt smallest to largest and ignore everything else, that's its motivational hack. I'm just not convinced that a three-step sequence, ZBB, then CFI, then avalanche, is really more resilient for the average person than the beautiful simplicity of the snowball.
The complexity argument is strong, but it only applies if the consumer has to keep doing that calculation. My argument is that the weakness of the avalanche, that long waiting period, can be mitigated almost entirely through behavioral pre-commitment and automation. We need to operationalize the avalanche, turn a psychological challenge into a simple, automated mechanism.
Tell us more about these pre-commitment strategies.
Well, we should be using digital modeling tools, things like Debt Payoff Planner or undebt.it, which can actually visualize the long-term savings of the plan. This helps to feed that present bias by making the distant goal more tangible. But more importantly, pre-commitment means setting up automatic, recurring transfers. You enforce the avalanche schedule. By automating the payments, you remove that feeling of loss and, critically, you eliminate the need for daily willpower when you're in that hot state of an impulse to spend. If the payment is gone before you could even claim that money, the temptation is gone too.
Pre-commitment is undoubtedly effective.
I agree. We see it with things like 401k enrollment, but it still requires the consumer to psychologically weather the storm. You're asking a stressed individual to automate the most financially painful path and then just wait. Maybe for 3 or 4 years, watching their $15,000 credit card balance shrink by just $200 a month, even if the interest savings are phenomenal.
But they are paying down the principal faster than with any other method.
The perception, though, is that it's slow. The snowball's value is in its built-in reinforcement. The act of getting that final zeroed-out statement, it provides these profound mental health benefits. Reduced stress, a feeling of control, genuine satisfaction. That feeling of closure is a far more accessible and intuitive motivational hack than relying on some digital chart or the abstract promise of future savings. The average person sees that as these emotional weights in their backpack. They just want to get them off quickly, no matter the size. If the biggest weights are visible for the longest time, they risk just dropping the whole backpack and quitting.
I appreciate the mental health perspective. I really do. But we have to return to the financial calculus. The disciplined execution of the Avalanche, whether it's supported by strict budgeting or by automated tools, it saves capital that is essential for long-term security. We're talking about optimizing financial outcomes. If we can achieve the needed discipline through automation, mathematical efficiency shouldn't just be dismissed because it lacks that immediate emotional gratification.
But we have to acknowledge that if the discipline required, either in the calculation or the execution, is too high, the plan fails. The best plan is the one that fosters consistent, sustainable action. For so many people, the mental benefits of the snowball's quick wins, they outweigh that marginal mathematical difference. It ensures they stay the course until the very end and actually get to zero, which is the goal we both want for them.
And ultimately, the optimal choice depends entirely on the borrower's self-assessment. Are they a person motivated by internal logic and long-term optimization, or by that immediate, tangible reinforcement?
Absolutely. Understanding your own behavioral tendencies is a critical first step before you even choose a strategy.
That is it for today. Thank you for taking the first step to clearing out debt, and we wish you all the best.